Well, hello everybody and welcome back. So we're at the tail end of 2023 and I thought this would be a great time to reflect back and look at what I've done to this channel, how I've grown it. I also want to look at why did I even start this in the first place? What kind of improvements have I made over the time? And what kind of things I want to do moving forward. So with that, I'm your host Sean and you're watching 300 Baud. Let's go ahead and get started. So why did I start this channel 300 Baud? Well, for two reasons primarily. The first was I have a pretty significant collection of 8-bit computers, mostly Commodore and Atari. At one time I had more than just Commodore and Atari. I had an Apple II Plus, I had some Macintoshes, I had a Flower Power iMac, I had an original iMac. I also had some European computers as well. I had a couple of Sinclairs and an Amstrad and some other obscure computers. But I ended up selling off of most of those just to focus on Commodore and Atari because I started to realize that collecting these computers can be pretty expensive and pretty difficult. So just narrowing it to Commodore and Atari, it's kind of focused me a little bit and allowed me to kind of have an obtainable goal. At one time, it was just any 8-bit computer I wanted to buy, and I had to narrow that down. So that's why I went with Atari and Commodore. My Commodore collection is pretty good. I've got most of the computers that Commodore produced during their time. Not all of them, actually, but I got quite a few of them. My Atari collection is much, much weaker, but I've always had a passion for Atari and Commodore. More towards Commodore than I did with Atari, but I have a soft spot for Atari. So that's number one, why I wanted to start the channel, was just kind of feature these computers that I have in my collection, noticing that they were just kind of languishing in my basement and I needed to do something more with them than just have them sitting in a box. So I figured I'd share the experience with you guys. The second reason I started my channel was because I wanted to build a hobby that would allow me to develop a new skill, mostly in video and audio production, messing around with different software applications, whether it be audio or video applications, and just kind of getting more comfortable in front of the camera, which is something that I am not. I am not comfortable in front of a camera, but after doing this for 3 years, I've gotten better at it. So yeah, that's kind of why I wanted to start the channel. Now, I was looking at my channel just the other day, and I was doing some sorting, and I was going through my YouTube studio and just kind of taking a look at what have I done over the past 3 years. And so I went into looking at my channel, I've got 57 videos that I've published. Now, out of those 57, let me see if I can pull up some analytics for you. In the lifetime of the channel, let me pull this down. My channel's received 99,853 views during its lifetime, which to me is just amazing that something that I created in my basement would have that many views. Now, many of these views are very, very short. Somebody accidentally hit it. But for those who are into the 8-bit computers, I think people have overall enjoyed the content that I've produced. Let's see here. I've got 1,323 subscribers, which you all mean a lot to me. I mean, if it wasn't for the subscribers, I probably wouldn't be doing this. But knowing that there are people who enjoy the content I'm making is nice. I actually enjoy that very much. So some other interesting facts about my channel is that I have, as far as geography goes, only 33% of my viewers are in the United States. It's followed by the United Kingdom, Germany, Canada, Australia, and it just gets smaller and smaller as we go. But that's kind of an interesting thing to see, is that there's actually quite an international audience for my channel. I've actually gotten quite a few comments from people from Italy. You know, I've used YouTube's Translate, or excuse me, Google Translate to translate some of my the comments that are left, and I'll try to translate it into Italian and try to be nice and about it. But I think that's really, really cool. And as far as viewer ages, most people that watch my channel are around my age. So we're looking at 45 to 54. We're looking at 45 to 54 years old, and predominantly male. Would like to see more diversity in the channel, but it is what it is, unfortunately. And a lot of it has to do with the era of the machines that I'm covering kind of date back to somebody my age. Somebody my son's age really has no interest at all in Commodores or Ataris. Oddly enough, though, this year was the year of the Atari. It allowed me to, when Atari released well, actually it was My Arcade, came out with this little Game Station Pro. This really got the viewers that I needed for the channel to monetize the channel, which was pretty awesome. And this little device here is actually pretty cool. I've done 2 videos on this one. I probably won't do any more. At least it'll be a little while before I do any more videos on this little guy. But what's interesting is I actually bought 2 of these things, and one of them I bought for myself, and I discovered that it's a heck of a little game system. It can emulate Nintendo, NES, Super NES, Game Boy, Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Color. It can also emulate the Sega, I believe Sega Master System, as well as the Genesis, Mega Drive, so it has a potential to play literally hundreds or thousands of games, and it does it pretty well. Now, what you will find is you probably need a better joystick, but just playing some of those classic 80s games is pretty cool. And also, I really appreciate the fact that Atari really helped me grow this channel. What's kind of funny is if you go back and look at the history of many of my videos I've done with Atari, they never performed very well. But 2023, that was Atari's year. I've always done much better with Commodore, and I do plan on going back to Commodore here shortly. So that's a look at the channel. Why don't we take a look at some of the videos that I've produced? So I started this channel in November of 2020, and my first video was on basically restoring a Commodore PET 4016 that was beyond its day with a new product at the time, the Mini PET. And that was actually a really cool project where I was able to buy a motherboard with some chips and solder everything together. I think I've learned a thing or two since I've done that video. I spent way too much time with the soldering iron in it. I don't think people want to watch 20 minutes of that, but the end result was actually really impressive. I had what felt like a Commodore PET when it was done. So that was the beginning of my channel. It's also where I got my title card that I developed, and I haven't done anything with that since. I'm still using the same one. That I actually programmed the PET to do the animation, and so that was kind of a cool little thing. And then I moved into an Arcade 1-Up 40th Anniversary Pac-Man file hack. That video I think is hilarious. That is the most disliked video I've got of all the videos I've done. So that one I actually enjoyed. And then that brings us into 2021. So in 2021, I was still kind of on the Commodore PET stage, and I featured 2 of my floppy drives that I had. I had an 8050 and an 8050N. I tried to revive them, but I don't really know enough about electronics, and I don't have any spare parts for these drives. And I think that would be very difficult to get those working again, but they are really cool disk drives. I also purchased a Terrible Fire accelerator card for my Amiga 2000. Turns out that I actually liked the GVP accelerator that I had, and I decided instead I'd take that Terrible Fire card and put it into an Amiga 500, which it's brilliant for in the Amiga 500. I like the Terrible Fire line simply because it uses original Motorola processors, so it's a real authentic 030, and I just kind of like that bare metal experience that you get with real hardware over something like an FPGA or something like that. Some of the other things I did is I acquired a Commodore PET C2N tape drive in the box in absolutely beautiful condition, and I did a video on that one. I also took a look at my Atari 4-port 5200, which I love the 5200. Most people really dislike the Atari 5200. I think it's wonderful. I also did some other videos with the Atari 5200. I purchased a controller that was a converted Atari Jaguar controller that would work on the 5200, and that was a really nice controller. I also bought a multi-cart for the 5200 so I could load all the original games on that one controller and have easy access to the games. It also allows you to put some of the kind of like the reworked, hacked versions of the games, which would sometimes enhance the graphics or even the control of the game would be enhanced. So like instead of a digital or instead of an analog version of Gorf, you had a digital version of Gorf, which was much more compatible with the Jaguar controller. I did some other things, like I took a look at a couple of the LCD games I have, which I have some more LCD games, and those actually did pretty well. I had a Radio Shack Turbo Raceway, and also another one, I can't remember which one it was. Oh, it was a Centipede that I got from Radio Shack as well, which Radio Shack, for those of you who are not in the know, used to be an electronics store where you go in and buy some pretty cool hobbyist electronics stuff. They don't really exist anymore. I also took a look at some Nintendo DSs I had. I have 3 DSs. Those DSs, I think there's one that I really like. I really like the original DS. I think it's a really cool thing. It's one that I got. I inherited it. I then gave it to my son. He played with it for years, beat the heck out of it, and it still works. It's really quite an amazing little game system. I also unboxed my Sinclair 1000. I had a box of Amiga stuff that I shared with you all. I also took a look at my Jack's Pacific Atari TV games, which came before the flashback. So it was basically an Atari in a joystick with like 10 different games in it, which was pretty cool. Another thing I did is I got a MK2 Commodore 64 Reborn motherboard from Individual Computers, and I shoehorned it into a Commodore 16 case. So basically I had essentially a dark brown or black Commodore 64, which looks super cool, has dual SID capability, and plus it's modern, so you're not suffering from old electronics. Some of the other things I did is I did a couple of videos on my Amiga 4000T, which is a very, very cool computer. It's a very, very unusual computer for an Amiga, but it's neat, and I'll definitely do some more content with that computer as I go. That was the first video I did that kind of went, for my channel, went viral. In other words, more than 200 people watched it. And then I did some unboxings on some of the Commodore 64s that I have. And then I did a video that I spent a lot of time on called "What Makes the Amiga Great" or something like that. That video actually did very well for my channel. I got a few thousand views, continues to get views. Overall, there's a few people that had to point out some things like the PC's always been better than the Amiga. Well, you can say what you like, but the Amiga was a pretty amazing computer for its time, and still remains to be an amazing computer, even though it hasn't been produced in 30 years or whatever. But I put a lot of time into that video, and I think it paid off. I also played the worst video game in the world. I actually didn't play it. I had my son play it, and determined that it's really not the worst video game in the world. It got a lot of flack, but E.T. was actually a pretty decent game for the Atari 2600. I featured a video with my $1 box computer. I put this thing to use. I used this thing for well over a year. I've upgraded the RAM to 20 gigabytes or something like that. And I've been using it. It's a dual Xeon computer. It's got 2 gigahertz Xeon processors in it. It really sucks a lot of energy. It uses about close to 300 watts at idle. It's about 275 watts at idle. I did recently get a new computer, which I'll feature at some point in this channel. But kind of goes to show, if you want to create a YouTube channel, you don't have to spend thousands of dollars up front buying the most expensive computer, a bunch of cameras, and all that stuff. You can start with just a few bucks and build up from there. Let's see here. I did some videos on my Amiga, some like what I consider to be a great starting computer for the Amiga, which would be the Amiga 500 with a terrible fire accelerator. I did a couple of little videos. I'm not sure what you all think of them, but they were thrift store finds. So I like to go to the thrift stores occasionally and check out some of the electronics that are there. I don't film in stores, so what I'll do is I'll buy some stuff and then bring it home and then kind of feature it on my channel. So you get some pretty interesting things. Also did, let's see here, I featured my Amiga 1200 motherboard that I built. I would really like to do more with that. Actually, I purchased Amiga 1200 motherboard that was refurbished. It doesn't have a keyboard or a case. It would be really nice if I could find a keyboard. I can get a case, but it's really difficult, and I definitely want to do more with that computer. But time has always been a problem. I also spent some time with my Atari Jaguar, did some unboxings, tried to do game reviews. I don't think I did a very good job. I'll try to do something better with the Atari Jaguar because it deserves a little bit more than what I did. I had I had a Apple Newton on loan for a short period of time. I've never played with an Apple Newton. Did a video on that. Found it to be kind of interesting, but it was something that if somebody gave one to me, it would be okay with it, but I don't really need a Newton, so I was okay with that. I also purchased my Sony TV, which you can see in the background. That one actually turned out to be a pretty nice system for what I need. It has the analog inputs, it has some digital inputs. I can pretty much plug anything into it, and it works pretty well. So that was another thrift store find, so it worked out well for me. I bought a bunch of things from the Future Was 8-Bit. They're the ones that did the Mini Pet. Just fantastic store out of England. But had a bunch of little odds and ends that I featured. I also looked at, I bought a Onkyo tape drive. I actually didn't even buy that when I was at the thrift store, and it just said free. And it wasn't working, but I managed to get it working again. So that was kind of cool. I also featured my Timex T80 Pac-Man watch, which my son gave me. Really cool, love it, still wear it to this day. I did a video featuring my studio in the game room, currently in the studio, and went to the game room. I only got like 300 views out of that one. I was expecting more views, but really nothing. But not a bad video, not great, but it might be something you want to take a look at. I also looked at what I considered to be artificial intelligence from the 1970s, a program called Eliza. And I figured what better computer to feature that on than the Commodore PET. So I played around with that, which is a pretty cool little program. That was something, I remember experiencing when I was about 6th grade, 7th grade, playing in the computer room at my middle school, messing around with a Radio Shack TRS-80, typing in Eliza. I just thought was the most amazing experience ever, having a computer talking back to you. And then that brings me into the Atari age. Now I'm looking at the Atari 2600 Plus. I did a video on the 2600 Plus when it was first announced, just a couple of days after the announcement, or a few days after it had been announced. And it was really about, do I need this thing? Now, that video actually did really well. And maybe people thought I had one, but I didn't. But I actually got compliments on that one. People liked that video, just talking about my justification as to why I want to get the 2600 Plus. Also did a couple of other things with my actual real Atari 2600s. I took out one of my original 2600s, I cleaned it up, I tested it out, it was working nice. I also did a composite mod on one of my 2600s, talked about whether I thought it was worthwhile or not. And while I went ahead and pre-ordered the 2600 Plus. I was one of the few that I didn't wait. It was like, I've got to have this. As soon as it was announced, I ordered it right away. A lot of other people were kind of like saying, oh, I'm going to wait. I ordered mine because I wanted it. So in the meantime, I pulled out my box of Atari 2600 games and started just kind of reflecting back on them, looking at them. I mean, this is a box I hadn't opened in probably 10 years or more. So that was a lot of fun, just going through the video games that I had. I also took a look at one of my Atari 2600s. It was the Vader 2600. Initially, I planned on doing the composite mod on that one, but I found that the Vader seems to be kind of rare, and it's kind of valuable. So I figured, let me just keep the Vader in its original condition, which I'm glad I did because I don't really think the composite mod was worth it, or at least the version that I had. Then I dragged out my Amiga 1000, and this is the first time I dragged out an Amiga, and actually it didn't work. Turned out to be just kind of a disk drive thing, and I managed to revive that. I also had a lot of disks that didn't work, so I had to create a new Kickstart image. I also used a Gotek drive for the first time. So there's a lot of learning going on there for me. I have to tell you guys, I'm not an expert on any of this stuff. I'm more of an enthusiast. So there's a lot of things I'm learning as I'm creating these videos. Then I got my Game Station Pro, and I did a review on that guy. And then I also compared it to the 2600 as well as the 5200. And then I finally, in November, got my Atari 2600 Plus, and I did some videos on that. Every one of these Atari videos really did well for my channel. I ended up getting a few thousand views, which was enough for me to be able to monetize my channel. Yeah, so I did a couple of YouTube shorts at one point in 2022 and 2023. I played around with Radio Shack Centipede, which is actually a heck of a lot of fun, as well as the Palm portable keyboard, which I will do some more content on the Palm in the near future. So that was a rather exhaustive review of what I've done with this channel since it started in November of 2020. Kind of hard to believe that 3 years have gone by rather quickly. A lot of things have changed since then. Maybe not so much this channel, but there have been a lot of changes. So what kind of things do I plan on doing with 300 Baud? Well, if you like the content so far, then I think you're going to enjoy what I've got coming. I typically shoot from the hip. I don't do a lot of scripting. Once in a while I'll write some things down, but I don't really like when I'm reading off a script, it just sounds artificial. And I kind of prefer just to kind of let things roll a little bit. But I would like to dive a little bit deeper in some of the content that I'm covering, and maybe have something that's a little bit more polished, a little bit more refined. I do still have quite a few computers that I have not featured, mostly Commodores and Ataris, but I do have a splash of a lot of different things as well. One computer that I'd really like to feature here shortly would be maybe the first computer I ever used. I probably will have that one coming out pretty soon. But before I do that, I definitely want to play a little bit more with my Amiga 1000. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you guys again as we move forward into the year 2024 and even further. Until then, take care of yourself, and I'll see you shortly, and goodbye.